Hi, thanks for joining me again today. We're looking at triple tonguing from the Arban book in my edition, which is a recent one, edited by Tom Hooten and Jennifer Marotta. This is on page 189. Now, this is a huge subject, and to be honest, I have to run into town very quickly, so I'm just trying to get this in so I can get it out to you folks. And I realize that, some of you may know how to triple tongue extremely well, maybe better than I am able to do so. Some of my students have that capacity. And some of you may just be trying to figure out how to do it. So I can't speak to everyone, so I'm just going to cover some of the basics of how to practice this and things to watch for. So you can see these exercises are actually very well designed. It starts with just two triplets, ta-ta-ka-ta-ta-ka-ta, rest. Ta-ta-ka-ta-ta-ka-ta, rest. Okay, that's a pretty simple pattern. But what it allows you to do is you're using a stream of air like this. So it's one steady stream of air. So that's one principle. Everything you're doing is a completely free-flowing, continuous, steady stream of air. Now, of course, when the tongue touches, we interrupt that flow. But we're not interrupting it from the body. We're blowing just as if we were playing a single stream of air continuously. And we're not interrupting it, we're trying not to interrupt it from the throat or with anything else but, as some would say, the tip of the tongue. So I'm going to play a little bit of this. I'm going to start out just playing what am I trying to say here? The extended airflow, continuous airflow, without the tongue, and then I'm going to add the tongue. So that seems really simple. As a matter of fact, it's so simple that you might get bored. But what I'm concentrating on is the rest. In other words, I'm staying poised and always ready as if that air were going continuously. Now I've suspended it for the rest. I might take a breath on one of those rests. But what I'm looking for is the evidence in the sound and in the way it feels that I'm playing with a continuous sustaining sound. Now, if I can't get that, the first thing I'll do is take out the rest. So all I'm going to be doing is playing up a scale pattern. Now, a way you can relate to this is if I were to sing and sing it continuously and then sing it with a break in between. If my voice remains poised, if my breath remains poised and ready for the next pronunciation, for the next vocalization, it'll be very, very similar to what we need to do on the trumpet. Now, most people actually rest during the rest. They'll stop, and then they'll kind of have to reset and restart. And this can create a lot of tension. What you're trying to do is maintain only the readiness necessary, not tension, because that causes a big problem with articulation. So this continuous airstream is the first thing, and noticing that you're always poised is part of that picture. Now, most people are concerned about the tongue when they do this. But all the tongue does is it kind of modulates the airstream. And the cleaner that it can do that, the better off the sound result usually is. So I practice this in many, many different ways. But I'm just going to do it slowly now. The bottom tempo is, he says, half note equals 64. And that's, for most people, what is a comfortable triple tongue tempo. Okay, you get the idea, and I don't want to play these for you because they're not that musically interesting unless you bring the music to it. So actually, that's what I'm doing when I'm playing. I'm playing a stroke, which is a gesture that feels graceful with the air. And I'm also just playing the scale pattern. So if I play through the whole thing, and you can hear it, I'm sure. So it's just a simple pattern that goes through F major. You probably noticed that I'm playing a C trumpet today, and the reason is I haven't played C trumpet for a long time, and that's very unusual for me. And I'm going to be playing it this afternoon, so I need to get used to it again. What else can we do with these? Well, you see, the second one is very similar, but it moves in a higher range. The third one, number 3, is more continuous playing. So now he's taken the rest out. And there's a movement from one that changes pitch in the middle of doing the triple tongue. So what you want to notice when you're practicing these is don't advance more quickly than you can be totally stable and confident and having fun with the result. If you go to the next level, you're starting to push your skills a little bit, and that's perfectly fine. But when you notice tension coming in, so that it's more difficult than just if it's more difficult than doing that, you need to do some refining work to get it back to where it's simple. Most people create tension when they practice triple tongue, and all tonguing actually, but especially the multiple tongue. So something to keep in mind. You need to be self-aware. Now, I'm going to go to number 3, and number 3 is a timing issue. Why? Because now instead of just playing a single tone, you're changing pitch. So it's, what I did is, you heard me do it, I took out the articulation so I can get just the timing. If you have trouble with this, put it on a metronome on and actually put a metronome on it and actually do the eighth note, triplet eighth note subdivision. So that's going all the way through. Now, if you're a trained musician, you're doing this automatically. You may not even be conscious of it, but it's happening automatically because you've trained yourself to do it. And this allows for a tremendous amount of precision, which is what we need when we're playing triple tongue. Or anything on the trumpet for that matter, but especially more rapid things like multiple tonguing, we need to have very precise timing. So I work on the timing first, and this would be a good example of it. Then I'll introduce the tonguing. The reason why I'm playing it that way is I'm listening for the balance of the sound, and I'm being very mindful of if I'm staying in the right, maintaining the right form in terms of how I'm blowing, my embouchure and everything else. And so it becomes a very meditative process, and this is basically how I practice. And I find that it's very powerful to practice in this way. Now, of course, I can just go ahead and play it. And I have the skill to do that, but when I play it that way, even though it sounds pretty good, I can get away with that even in a performance, I realize it doesn't feel as easy as when I was playing it slower. And really the quality of what you're doing in terms of the sound and the feel should be maintained. So when you're introducing more difficulty by going faster, for instance, then you have to recognize, well, am I also paying a price for it? Am I starting to grind a little bit? Am I pushing it a little bit instead of finding the place where the sound is completely free and maintaining that all the time? So for me, I find these very, very useful for listening to the quality of the sound to tell whether I'm staying completely open and relaxed. And a couple of my students recently have mentioned that they kind of discovered on their own, wow, if I do a lot of multiple tonguing, double and triple tonguing, that helps to really loosen me up. Now, if you already have the skill, that's something you should definitely try and do. When I go on to number 6, what's the difference here? Well, now you have 3 quarter note, 3 eighth note triplet groupings, 3 quarter notes worth of triplets, and then a quarter note. So you have 3 tatika patterns in a row, and then a little while later you have 4, and so you see what Arban is doing. He's introducing more, gradually more layers of difficulty. Now you have total control over this, and you're the boss. You're the coach, basically, of yourself. So you have to pick what's going to work. Eventually, I'm flipping over to, this is number 12, now we have 7 triplets in a row. Now at this point, you may have noticed if you're actually working on these, and I encourage you to do so because you can't get better at it any other way, you need to recognize, oh yeah, at the top of the staff, I'm starting to gain more tension. Now, if that's not the case, you're doing great. For most trumpet players, it is the case when we get higher in the range. And for most people, it starts around the D or the E in the staff. And of course, you're playing on C trumpet, it might be even a little bit sooner than that. But in any case, this is something that you need to work on, because as soon as you feel that tension coming in, you notice that you should notice that you've lost balance a little bit, and you're trying to find it. So I'm not going to get into the details of the mechanics right now. That's for another session. But if you listen for it and you become aware of it physically, it can be tremendously helpful. Now, what's the point here? Triple tonguing is just so you can go faster. And when you mix the K and the T in various combinations, it allows you to tongue faster than you would single tongue. Now, my single tongue is pretty slow. I say slower than average. And I've worked on it for a long time. So it's just one of those things that maybe I'm genetically not capable of it, or maybe I just haven't discovered a better way to do it yet. But I keep working on it. But I've never had a problem, because I've always been able to substitute multiple tonguing whatever I needed to, and no one could hear the difference. So the point is, triple tonguing is to get the quality of articulation that you want, only going faster than you could with single tongue. That's the only reason, whether it's triple or double tongue. And this is just the first step. Triple tongue comes first, I should mention, and Arban put it that way in the book, because as many of you may have experienced, when you double tongue first and you get accustomed to that, which is a more common articulation, especially in band literature, then the triple tongue ta-ta-ka pattern seems to be awkward, and it tends to go ta-ta-ka, 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 ta, and limp a little bit. And of course you don't want that. So it's hard to keep it even. So this is one of the main things you're listening for. I talked about the sound being even, the sound being as free as possible. You also want the rhythmic production being absolutely even, and you want the quality of the articulation, the front of the notes, the shape of the notes, the way they're pronounced to be absolutely even. Now, that doesn't mean that it has to be even all the time, but that shows that you have a degree of control that allows you to have more musical expression. So eventually you get to where you're doing longer and longer groups, and then he starts to have you deflecting in a typical Cornet's solo pattern. Now, since, I'll go ahead and play a little bit, but since I'm an orchestra player, I don't practice this stuff. And I remember Mr. Herseth saying to me one time, yeah, if I see, Alvarado del Grazioso on the schedule, I get out the Arban book about 6 months ahead of time and start working on treble tonguing. Now, what that told me is, well, he's not working on treble tonguing every day, because he's got other things on his plate, and it doesn't really, other than fanfare style triple tonguing, you don't really need to do this kind in the orchestra very much, but you need to do it in cornet solos a lot. So in case you don't know Alvarado del Grazioso, you can look it up. It's a piece by Ravel that has some of the most difficult multiple tonguing for trumpets in the literature. And it's more continuous like this, and it also moves through the range, and et cetera, et cetera. So you can use that as a jumping off point for making yourself crazy in learning it, or you can stick with the fundamentals like I try and do and get more comfortable with it. So these patterns start moving around in pitch and time. So you say I played, this is number 17, I played that all slurred. Now if I go and treble tongue it, now I can execute that, but as you can hear, it's a little rough, it's a little stiff. I would need to get loosened up. And this is one of the most helpful, therapeutic ways of using multiple tonguing, is to get loose. That's the main reason why you should practice it, even if you're not going to play cornet solos. So I'm going ta-tika, 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 and the mechanics are getting a little bit stiff. So I want to figure out how to get a clear articulation that's separated. And as soon as I'm loose, everything starts to sound much more quickly and easily. I get an instant response. I'm not working as hard. The tongue is more relaxed. I can go faster. And this all takes a tremendous, for me anyway, it takes a tremendous amount of time to go through and a meticulous approach where the main thing is to get loose and to maintain the quality of the movement and the quality of the sound as a result. Now eventually you get to the point where you're doing cornet-y kind of stuff, which is just what I did, number 29 for example. I have a star on that, which means I need to practice it, which I haven't done. So it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but it's the same thing that I was just talking about. Yeah, it's almost exactly the same, only let's see, now the tempo is. You see how that's a little quick for me. I'm going to need to slow that down. Now I can do the tonguing, but I can't put the whole package together. And when you practice, this is what you're trying to do. So you notice I slurred it before. I just sustained sound. I took the tempos way down. I listened for stability in the sound. When I reintroduced the articulation, then I started doing it to try and do it with a quality and evenness in the sound and in the articulation sounds, the more percussive sounds of the release and the ending of the note, so that they sound very, very similar throughout. It's all about qualities. If you practice the qualities, in order to get those qualities, you're going to need to stay a little bit looser, and it's going to be very helpful for you to do that for all the rest of your playing, even if you're not doing triple tonguing regularly. So where should I go from here? Oh yeah, I started that, so I should show you a couple of things to keep you going here. I practice K by itself all the time. I introduce it to into all my exercises, especially sustaining exercises. So let's see. So that's stolen from Scott Belk's worm burner exercises. And I love those patterns. I find them really, really useful for flow. But let's say I'm working on those and I start to introduce tonguing. I'm going to practice single K and single T, and then various patterns. So I might simply just add treble tongue to that. So if you can do this without strain, stop if you feel yourself fighting and straining, choking, pressing, pushing. But if you can keep a lyrical, smooth quality, like a cornet player, regardless of the range, regardless of the dynamics, regardless of the speed, you will have accomplished a tremendous amount to improve your overall trumpet technique. It's not just about fast tonguing. It helps you to balance airflow, embouchure, setup, everything, your posture, everything that's happening, all the details of your sound production are involved. And you can feel it's more difficult to triple tongue in the upper register for most people, and that's because we accumulate tension. So I get up to the top and I'm going, and everything is kind of backed up and choked. So it really helps me if I can stay open. Now, don't go beyond what you can do, and don't cause yourself a lot of grief and struggle. Get in the sandbox and just play around like a kid for a while and enjoy the process and notice if you can get more comfortable with it. One more thing, I'll let you go. I do connected tonguing a lot. So it'd be ta ta ka ta ta ka ta ta ka ta ta ka ta. That's separated. It's not da da ga da da ga ta ta ka ta ta. It's separated, but it's still kind of a long connected sound with very little space in between the notes. And then I try and separate them more. So practice the whole spectrum. So you might consider that kind of a legato or smooth kind of tonguing, and work your way toward a more separated, lighter style of articulation. All by itself, that is a great exercise. So I know I've thrown a lot of material at you, and it's not all quick fix, is it? It's all long-term trumpet development, trumpet skill development. So sorry for this rust session, but I hope this will get you started with the idea of triple tongue, and maybe I'll go back and do another little video on it explaining the how-tos more at some point, if I get around to it. Okay, hope you're having a good day where you are. Enjoy the process. It's a lot of work, but when you discover the gold, after you dig through all those tons of dirt, and you learn how to bring that into your daily way of playing, it's a very, very satisfying process. So enjoy. I'll see you later on. Bye-bye.